We thought that since the flavors people enjoy chewing the most are the refreshing aspects of peppermint and spearmint, we should probably use real peppermint and spearmint in the gum, right? We've wanted to make this gum for a really long time, but it hasn't been easy to do. The technology and the product performance just haven't been there until now. And we've chosen to take it a step farther. It's vegan and non-GMO. No artificial sweeteners, flavors, colors, preservatives, which again are not easy things to do, but we think they're the right thing to do and for the future. Our hope is that we give you a better product with better ingredients and challenge the status quo of the gum industry, and you'll get more products like this as well from even other gum companies. And in the process, the American farmer wins, which is a really great idea. When you open up our pack of our new clean chewing gum, when you smell it, this will be the mint that you smell. It's the real thing. It's full transparency for you. And that's the thing that we're excited about. We want to make products that you know where they come from, the ingredients you can pronounce, and that's the thing that we want more of.
Yeah, thanks for coming up. Can you tell us real quickly just a little more what Project 7 is?
Well, today we're a specialty candy brand that really it's got its start in the chewing gum world and then has spread into other candy items like gummy bears, lollipops, licorice, that sort of thing. But the name Project 7, the impetus of that was to build a sustainable brand that was a giving model for 7 different charities, different areas of need. So hunger, clean drinking water, these types of things that as you purchase them in the background, there was just ongoing funds that were being raised for these organizations.
Awesome. So just some quick context. Let's go back a few years and let's talk about just your childhood and just what was like. You grew up in a highly entrepreneurial family. And so for you, how do you feel like that has led you into where you're at today? And really, what are some of the main things that you took out of that original environment that you feel like you're beginning to apply with what you've been doing here for the last 10 years?
When Charles and you had this question, I thought it was really good. It's something you take for granted, that's the environment that I was raised in. Kind of like not being a native Californian and moving to a surf community. And all of my friends, they teach their kids every weekend. They're out in the water, they're surfing. And my kids are like, how do we do that? They didn't grow up around that kind of rhythm, that cadence. And I don't know a ton of people far back in my family, but the ones that I do know, I was a 4th generation entrepreneur. So it was something that was passed down over and over again. I had a very unique upbringing that I would be willing to put a sizable amount of money on that nobody in this room has experienced. And that was that I grew up in the panhandle of Texas, which is a very agribusiness, arid community in a town that was the beef capital of the world. So that meant that at any given time, there were 1 million cows in my town being commercially fed for the beef industry, and there was only 15,000 people that lived in the town. And my family had a pet food business, a pet food factory on the outskirts of town, and about 400 people came to work there every day, and I lived on the property where the factory was. And my dad had a whole menagerie of animals. We were like the local zoo. So we had zebras, llamas, emus, you name it. And so I grew up around this ecosystem that was just living and breathing all the time of just my dad who was dealing with a lawsuit, a product recall, a factory breaking down, a big customer call to someone that counted on a sale. And so just being around that became my normal. And my dad, we'd walk into a grocery store. Every grocery store we came across, we'd go into a grocery store, we'd go in the pet aisle, we'd go through all the products. He'd explain to me, what do you like about this product? What do you see? And so this thing was just happening of just learning. So when I went to college, came back, that's all that I wanted to do. I'd grown up going to trade shows with him, and I was thrown into the fire early on. I started a natural pet food brand for my family called Merrick, and that was an incredible, a lot of fun. But it was baptism by fire. Just dealing with family dynamics of fighting, and the challenges of father-son situations, and that are completely all normal, but just everyone trying to sort out their role. What I learned in all of that was that for you guys who are aspiring entrepreneurs, to give yourself a little bit of a break, because it is a whole different world, and those lessons just take time to learn, kind of like back to the surfing thing of just practicing over and over again.
So, given that you experience all these dynamics of, what running a business is like growing up, as you begin to really gather the vision for what Project 7 was, were you ever in that place where you're like, do I really want to go into this entrepreneurship thing? And why leave really the family, company and the stability of that to be able to go do your own thing? Was there was it a very specific kind of vision or calling? Was it like, I just need to get my own space, or was it just, I have to start something?
I think you have to be crazy.
Answer D.
I mean, it was a culmination of things. So, I did not have to leave, and it would have been a lot more comfortable to stay. I a lot of times regret leaving. So I think that's a normal thing. I hope conversations from this stage are transparent in that nature of being honest about setbacks and that sort of a thing. But when I decided to leave, I was at a real fork in the road. I had created this pet food brand that was the pinnacle of excess for dogs and cats. And that sounds really kind of funny, but I'd made up all these crazy things like, buffalo stew for dogs and California rolls for cats. And so there was just this, crazy stories of just all of my interactions were at trade shows or with customers, that it was all about, the best they could get for their dog or their cat, and this whole lifestyle that I had, built around the best. And I really struggled with, is this what I want to do with the rest of my life? It's not like we were a family drug cartel and we were, dealing drugs. We weren't doing anything that was in bad nature, but I was like, do I just want to leave the world? Is the legacy just that, like, I made some cat's life on the upper side of West Manhattan, better. And I remember one time a lady calling me that was this really respected nutritionist doctor in DC, and she just was like, your food's amazing, and we're giving it this award, and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know if you know, but I'm friends with Madonna and Bruce Springsteen, and all of our dogs are these special dogs, and my dog married Madonna's dog. And you found yourself just being like, and that's the the top of it, but you just were like, wow, this is not normal. And so I was struggling with, am I going to stay in this path and keep doing this, or leave it all together and go into full-time ministry? I'm a Christian, and I wanted to pursue from a faith perspective something around that nature. And at the same time, I was just learning about social entrepreneurship. And so my dad, God bless him, he was being patient with me. I was trying to figure out ways to build that into our pet food brand and different things, and it wasn't working, and there wasn't anything that was going to not work that wasn't like animal welfare, which we were back to this cycle of going, I got to do more. So when I decided that I wanted to go out on my own, it was purely from that perspective. Okay, I love this place, I love marketplace, I love products, but I want to build something around an impact that's ongoing from a giving legacy, instead of just, more dogs and cats being happy.
It's a lot of happy dogs and cats, though. I mean, there's people in this world that would love to have that as their legacy. But so fast forward a bit. Project 7 has gone through a lot of iterations in the journey. And I remember, I met you very early on when it has like kind of 7 different products. You know, the water bottle, the bottled water, and a bunch of different stuff. And then kind of watch from the outside. And then one day I was at Target and there's Project 7 products sitting in the aisle. And I remember, one, being proud of a friend for what that meant, but then also going like, man, I know that guy. Like, it was like super cool to see and like to kind of experience that story. But I think the unique dynamic that I had is I had some context for what it, where you were and where you've been to get to that place and to have a product in the stores or in the aisles of a store like Target. Some can see it as an overnight success because all of a sudden it's just there. But I think a lot of us as founders especially know that there really is no such thing. It's just no one gets to see what's happened along the way. But can you talk to a little bit about what that is like, the grinding and the perception, like the reality of what it took to get that there versus the feeling of this like overnight success piece?
I definitely think that our brand and our business story could be in the Smithsonian someday in the archives of like what not to do and all of the pivots along the way. I think to go back to the beginning, and it would be helpful to tell that story, you have to understand, when I started Project 7, I really took it from a solution approach to solving some gaps for nonprofits. So it was really a mathematical equation for me. I didn't want to just sell more stuff. For example, I knew that the nation's food bank system, which is kind of the parent nonprofit is Feeding America. It's all of our food banks that there's several in San Diego and then Orange County where I live. That their gap of meals that they said that was insecurity in the country was around 6.5 billion meals. So I just took that 6.5 billion and I began to work it backwards. And I was like, if you got X amount of products on the shelf doing, 3 times a week at a Walmart, here's what that would produce and how many meals from a giving perspective. And so I had this really ambitious idea of, now, human trafficking, some of these things, child labor, those are really big, hard problems that you can't just take that approach. But basic things like hunger, homelessness, that type of a thing. And I know that's not I know that's not a basic one. But I took the same model with hotels, and we pitched a whole thing with Starwood back in the day on how many nights we could close in a city and how many people would not be out on the streets anymore. So I had this really ambitious thing of like, a lot of these can be solved if people would just buy this way. And so I'm going to speak in some grocery terms that, I take for granted that people don't really understand. But you understand up until about 20 years ago, all the way that we bought brands were major companies that created all the brands on your shelf. So Procter & Gamble being the biggest one, and then what happened was this rise of what's called private label. So Vons is in this shopping center. Vons is a Safeway, Albertsons, trickle-down brand. And they started to realize that for us to compete with Tide, and Tide being sold at Kroger and Walmart at different prices, that we need to come up with our own laundry detergent under our own brand that can only be bought here. And it was a really big bet because up until that point it had been all ads, telling you why Tide was the best. And that started, and it started to take off, and you started to grow, and companies like Trader Joe's were the real inspiration for that. We got to be more like Trader Joe's. So when I started Project 7, I wanted to be like a private label brand across grocery stores that was this giving brand. Like have 100 different products from granola bars to coffee to trash bags that competitively priced, but this equation on them that we could shore up this gap. And so by the time I got to market with the idea, this rise of private label brands had just taken off. And you had buyers that were like, no, why would we put in your granola bar that's nothing fancy when we'll put our own granola bar, like Vons has Organics brand. So I had to learn, which kind of leads into your pivot question, but I had to learn really quick quick that I had to die to that dream. So about 5 years in, that was not working. We weren't getting the traction of, getting multiple products on shelf and that whole equation. And so chewing gum was this weird thing in the mix that had kind of stuck, no pun intended. And so when we just flipped it all upside down. We were like, the giving story on the front of the package wasn't working anymore. People didn't care. They've gotten past that. Like, I did that once. Now I want to go back to my regular scheduled brand. And so I just gave them what they wanted. Came up with all these crazy flavors, moved the giving story to the back of the package, and we went for the second act after we'd lost all these stores and went to Target and Walmart and these guys and said, here's what we did wrong, here's what we think we need to do next. And we still do all of the giving, but we just don't have it under the dream of how I thought it had to look the first way.
So, chewing gum is going well. You're in, how many stores roughly are you guys in with your chewing gum, do you think?
Probably like 15,000, somewhere in there.
So across the country available, and it's going well, and you start to look at some other options. And you probably looked at millennials and their just incredible ability to consume sparkling water and thought that that's it. Everyone's doing the sparkling water thing, and I would assume that just saw a lot of opportunity there based off of your experience in the grocery world and creating products, and so you decided to dive into that. And could you tell us a little more about that little side journey that you started on?
Yeah, I begrudgingly would be happy to tell you. I think this is something that entrepreneurs, can struggle with. After we relaunched, so what I forget that I didn't really close the loop on that last part, but 5 years into Project 7, it completely failed. We lost every major customer. I had to, look at closing the whole company down, and it was all around the velocity, which is what you're judged on, how much you're selling every week in, week out at stores. They were saying, hey, you're not selling, people are kind of over the giving thing. And so we started over again with, like I shared with you, these crazy flavors and moved the giving story to the back. Well, we're about 4 years into that, and we're hitting a stalling point again where gum continues to struggle, and I don't mean just not like our gum, but the whole gum industry. It's pretty much ran by, like Mars Wrigley is 60% market share. So as they go, the rest of the category goes. So there was just general apathy across the board from buyers that were just saying, man, I'm glad you're killing it or doing well in gum, but gum's not doing good for us. We have no interest in putting gum in. And so I just began to get nervous, and what I should have done was truly put that energy and effort into trying to solve what was next for Project 7 inside of that world. But I got distracted with a shiny new object that was over here, which was this growing category of sparkling water, and I thought maybe that could be like a backup plan if this one doesn't work. And so I started playing around in the lab and making some ideas up, but I wasn't going to go without like some people behind me. And so I took it to some retailers, and I had an incredible backup singing band. Kroger was behind it. Kroger was like, if you make it, we'll put it in. Target was like, if you make it, we'll put it in. Whole Foods was like, if you make it, we'll put it in. Walmart will put it in. And I had not had that kind of acceptance in a long time, and it felt good. Whereas the gum side was like, yeah, it's a struggling category. So I decided to go forward with it. And right as we're coming out with it and launching it, a little company called Pepsi starts Bubbly and puts everything in the kitchen sink behind it in price and marketing. And then Coke buys Topo Chico, which is always around here. And so there just began to be this incredible battle and surge for shelf space. And I found out real quick to, being in San Diego to borrow one from Anchorman. Like, I brought a knife to a gunfight, and I was way in trouble. And financially, I had all these retailers, but I needed serious money to support the promos, the shipping, and it became really quick, about 9 months into it, that I could not keep doing this at the loss that I was doing. And tried to pull on some financial partners, but it was too late. And so I ended up making the decision to, hopefully, a younger version of myself probably wouldn't have done it, but I just made the decision, like, I can't do this. I got to take the L, and not try to keep pushing down this path. Came back to my team, said I'm sorry for, pursuing this, and you have my 100% undivided attention on the candy business.
There's a lot of there's so many rabbit holes I want to go down in your story, and we don't have time to go there. But I think one thing and why we felt it was so important to start with Tyler is really the transparency and the vulnerability that's associated with it. He sits up here now as someone who's created something so unique that it's, like I said, it's sold all over the country, yet also carrying we'll call it wisdom from these decisions that didn't happen, and I think one, and just to appreciate your ability to be vulnerable and transparent in that, because I think that's where we as fellow entrepreneurs get the most value from. But for you, like, where do you feel like as you continue through this kind of ebbs and flows of entrepreneurship, what is it that keeps you grounded, and really what is it that allows you to really keep going when you have this vision and you have this opportunity, and really it wasn't even like a decision you made, but the big guys came in and just said, like, nope, you're done. What keeps you going and moving forward in the journey that you're on?
Oh man, yeah. Well, first and foremost would be my faith, and I don't know how people do it without their faith, because it would just be a really, it already feels like quicksand with it, and to be without it would be really a challenge. Family would be the other one. My wife has been incredibly long-suffering, and parents, friends, and my team that have taken those hits with me and said, I'm staying with you, and I'm gonna lean in. And then, for whatever reason, God's grace, just this eternal optimism that I'm one product away, one customer away, kind of like Groundhog Day every day, because I'm rejected so many times a day. That's what you deal with every single day. And our business is you get reports from retailers every single week, and it's like getting a report card every week. And it's like, were you up, were you down? And so you can find your identity. I have struggled to find my identity when I get those reports of, if we had a good week, I'm like, I'm good, I'm good, I'm okay. And then the weeks that are bad, being like, oh God, please help me. Not that I don't need him the weeks that are going good, but that finding that foundation in that, even if this is what I finally had to do, and I have to do it regularly, is that even if it all fails and nothing ever happens out of this, and I lose it all, that it's okay. And that's a really hard one to get to. But that grounds you in a lot of ways. And having people around you that speak that into you too.
That's awesome. Can we thank Tyler